This is the biblical wilderness. And honestly, it's smaller than you think. From Egypt to Israel is only about 250 miles, which even if you walked at a slow pace, would take you less than 2 months to travel. So why did it take the Israelites 40 years? Now, one of the things that people will often say is that the Israelites were wandering through the wilderness, as if they were just lost and couldn't find their way. But the Bible makes it clear that that's not the case at all. God was actually guiding them, talking to them constantly, providing them with food and water. Nothing about this journey is random. The more you read, the clearer it becomes that this journey was never meant to be quick. God made it last 40 years on purpose. And that forces us to stop and ask the question, why? Why would God keep his people wandering for decades in a wilderness that didn't have food or water or shelter? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to go there. And so I'm going to take you with me into the wilderness of Israel to explore this dangerous, mysterious place in the Bible. And together, we're going to discover not only why God kept his people there for so long, but also why the wilderness may be a place that will help us to feel more connected to God than we ever have before. Let's go. You know, when most people look at the wilderness, all they see is death. There's no water, no animals, no signs of life anywhere. But I gotta be honest, for me, this place is a place of miracles. You see, on my first trip to Israel, we hiked for 7 to 10 miles every day. And for the first few days, I did great, but my knees didn't. All of a sudden, there came a point where I honestly couldn't walk anymore. I was wearing knee braces, taking medicine, but I was in agony. And then we came here to the Negev desert. And I've got to be honest, I was afraid. I mean, this seemed like the worst place to be with 2 bad knees. And as I got off the bus, I was in so much pain that I could barely walk. My knees were on fire. The braces were tearing up my skin. Every step I took was agony. I mean, this was the epitome of being in the wilderness, being in pain, suffering, and feeling so alone. Until out of nowhere, I heard God speak. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. In this vast wilderness, the voice of God was so clear inside of me. And what I heard God say was, take them off. And at first I hesitated. I mean, I thought, is this just my own mind saying this? But that voice just wouldn't go away. And so when our group finally took a break from our hike, I decided to take a step of faith and listen to that voice. I took off the knee braces, and I'm not kidding when I tell you that from that moment on, I was not in 1 ounce of pain for the rest of the trip. But that's not even the most amazing part, because when my body was healed, all of a sudden, my eyes were opened, and I realized where I was, why this spot, this wilderness, was so significant. And from that moment forward, scriptures were unlocked for me that I had never understood before. And suddenly it became so clear to me why God had kept the Israelite people there for so long, why they needed that time in the wilderness. And let me take you there, to where I experienced my miracles so that you can see it for yourself. The Negev desert is one of the most unlivable places in all of Israel. All around me right now is nothing but dirt and rocks. It's in the hundreds and can get up even higher. And yet I think this may be one of the most unique and powerful places in all of Israel, because this is where God's relationship with Israel started. One of the things that's so important to remember is that God's relationship with Israel really begins after they've been slaves in Egypt for generations. And so for generations, all they've known is slavery. It's all their grandparents knew, and their grandparents' grandparents, and generation back. And so when they get into the wilderness, when they are freed from slavery, still all they know is how to be slaves. And it's here, in the wilderness, that God teaches them how not to be slaves. And when you look at the 10 Commandments, what you see is not just a list of rules that God gives them, but what God is doing is teaching them how not to be slaves. The first command is that you shall worship the Lord your God alone. Right? I'm the God who brought you out of Egypt, and I'm the one who will deliver you, not those Egyptian gods. You shall not have false idols, other Egyptian idols that you worship. You shall be my people who are no longer slaves, and so once a week you will rest. You will not work nonstop. And just like all the things you saw in Egypt where people murdered each other and stole from one another, or where you did those things to survive, you won't do that anymore, because I'm going to teach you how to be free. And so when you get out into this wilderness, what you begin to see is how that relationship developed. You know, when they enter the promised land, there's going to be all kinds of distractions and temptations. God's people are going to spread out over a massive area of land. But here, it's just God and Israel, focusing on that relationship together. And when you stand in the Negev, you can feel that. You can feel how this is the place where God protected and guided and took care of the Israelite people for 40 years, where they didn't wander, but God led them to the promised land. And in the whole process, taught them how to be free. I gotta be honest, for most of my life, I had no idea why the Israelites spent so many years in the wilderness. I mean, I figured they were being punished or were lost. I mean, I had no idea what was really going on. And maybe you felt that way too. Like, there are so many things in the Bible just like this that you just don't understand. You aren't sure if you're believing things that are false, and you don't feel like you even really know where to go to uncover what's true. Well, here's what I realized, and it took me years to figure this out. You don't have to travel to the wilderness to find the right answers. And you don't have to go to seminary or buy tons of books or spend years studying. Because honestly, the biggest barrier keeping most of us from knowing what the Bible really says isn't that we're not spiritual enough, or we're not smart enough, or even that we don't try hard enough. It's that we're not old enough. And what I mean is, there's a 2,000-year gap between us and the Bible. And there are things that they naturally understood back then that we just don't know anything about. Things they knew about the land and the locations and their people's history that made answers to questions like, why did the Israelites spend 40 years in the wilderness, so clear to them, but not to us. I mean, it's just like how 150 years ago, everybody knew how to start a fire without matches. And, well, I, for one, don't even know where to start. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. It's actually not that hard to bridge the gap. I mean, it's entirely possible to read the Bible just like Jesus did. Just like it's possible to learn how to start a fire without matches. You just have to know the process and how to learn it. In fact, in a few weeks, I'm going to be hosting a 5-day challenge called Unlock the Bible, where I'm going to teach you how to unlock scripture without having to go to seminary or Bible college, without having to buy tons of books or spend tons of money. And here's the thing. The stuff that I'm teaching you is so simple and so powerful that you're going to actually start reading the Bible differently during this challenge. And more importantly, you're going to hear what God's saying to you and discover important next steps that are going to bring you closer to Jesus and transform your life. And so if you're interested, just click the link above or down in the description. And if you'd like to see another video that's going to help you understand a confusing scripture and separate fact from fiction, then just click this link right here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.